She accepted another Alpha's proposal. The Alpha King interrupted the ceremony, claiming his true Luna. The banquet hall smelled like lilies and lies. Selene stood at the altar in a white gown that was not her choice. Her hands held a bouquet she had not picked out. Beside her, Alpha Dorian Vale wore the calm smile of a man who believed the evening already belonged to him. 200 guests filled the rows of chairs. Her father sat in the front row, watching with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had finally closed a business deal. 11 days ago, Selene had said yes to Dorian. It was not love. Her family's pack was in debt, and Dorian's was not. Marriage, in her world, was often just another kind of trade. The officiant lifted the old ceremony book. If anyone here objects to this union. He never finished the sentence. The doors at the back of the hall did not open. They broke apart, wood splintering across the marble floor. Wind rushed in first, cold and sharp. Then a man stepped through the wreckage, like he had personally been insulted by the existence of those doors. Kael Ashwood, Alpha King of the Northern Circle, walked into the room. He was tall, broad, dressed simply, but with the kind of presence that made everyone rise from their seats without thinking. He had not come from a battle. He had come from years of searching, and he had finally found what he was looking for. Selene could not move. The moment his scent reached her, something like cedar and the air right before a storm, her whole body went still. For her wolf, stillness was not calm. It was the loudest kind of shock. "You're late for a wedding you weren't invited to," Dorian said, trying to sound amused. His voice did not fully hide his anger. Kael did not look at him. His eyes were only on Selene. "You're not marrying him." It was not a question, it was a fact, spoken the way someone might say the sky is blue. Selene opened her mouth, but no words came. 3 years of silence had taught her how to stay quiet, even when her heart was pounding loud enough to hear. "Excuse me?" Selene's father stepped forward, his voice sharp with the confidence of someone who had forgotten how dangerous an Alpha King's anger could be. Kael's gaze still did not leave her. "She's my mate." The words landed heavily in the room. He did not explain further. He did not need to. Somewhere deep inside her chest, a bond she had spent 3 years telling herself was only a memory suddenly came alive again. Dorian's jaw tightened. "She accepted my proposal." "She accepted safety," Kael said. "I'm the one who can actually give it to her." A wave of whispers spread through the guests. 200 people were quietly trying to understand what they had just walked into. Selene finally found her voice, though it came out smaller than she wanted. "You disappeared." "I didn't leave," Kael said. "I was taken. 3 years locked away by wolves who wanted my throne more than they wanted me alive to sit on it." No one asked him to explain further. No one dared. He crossed the hall slowly, without any rush, which somehow made the moment feel even heavier. He stopped close enough that she had to tilt her head up to meet his eyes. "I felt our bond grow weaker every year," he said quietly, only for her to hear. "I thought you might have died. I would rather that have been true than to stand here and watch you marry someone else out of fear." "It wasn't fear," she whispered. "It was survival." "They're not so different," he said gently. "Just different reasons for the same fight." The bouquet slipped from her hands and fell to the floor. She did not remember letting go of it. Dorian reached out and grabbed her wrist, his grip firm. "Selene, we had an agreement." Kael's eyes moved to Dorian's hand on her wrist, and something in his expression made it clear he had already decided that hand needed to move. "Let go," Kael said. His voice was calm, but there was no room for argument in it. Dorian released her wrist immediately. Selene looked between the broken doors and the broken pieces of the last 3 years. She realized, with a strange kind of clarity, that she had been grieving a man who was never actually gone, only delayed. "Everyone believed you were dead," she said. "I believed you were dead." "I know," he said. His hand lifted, not touching her, just close enough that she could feel its warmth. "I'm not asking you to explain why you're wearing that dress. I'm only asking you to take it off for a better reason." Behind them, her father was already trying to figure out how to explain this to the pack elders. Dorian stood frozen, already deciding how much this moment would cost him later. Selene did not look at either of them. She reached up and unclasped the pearl necklace at her throat, an old family heirloom that had belonged to Dorian's grandmother. worn more like an invisible leash than a gift. She let it fall gently beside the bouquet. "Then ask me the right way," she said. "This time, when I'm not part of a deal." Kael almost smiled. Almost. "Selene Marchetti," he said, loud enough for the entire room to hear. "I spent 3 years in a cold cell repeating your name, so I wouldn't forget the sound of it. Choose the man who came back for you, not the one who bought a place while I was gone." The hall went completely silent, waiting. She said yes before he even finished speaking. For a moment, no one moved. Then the room seemed to exhale all at once, and voices rose in confusion, surprise, and disbelief. Some guests whispered behind their hands. Others simply stared, unsure whether to celebrate or panic. Dorian stepped back, his face pale with anger and embarrassment. He straightened his jacket, trying to hold on to whatever dignity he had left. "This is not how business is done," he muttered. "This was never business for me," Selene said, finally finding her full voice. "It was survival, and now I don't have to survive that way anymore." Her father moved forward, his voice tight with panic. "Selene, think about what you're doing. The alliance with Dorian's pack." "The alliance can be rebuilt in other ways," Kael interrupted, his tone firm, but not unkind. "Debts are paid with time and effort, not with a person's whole life." Selene's father opened his mouth to argue, but something in Kael's steady gaze made him pause. Kings did not usually explain themselves twice. Kael turned back to Selene, ignoring the murmurs around them. "I know this isn't how you imagined tonight going." "No," she admitted, a small, surprised laugh escaping her. "I imagined a lot of things. None of them involved a door being destroyed. I'm not usually one for doors," he said simply. That earned him the first real smile she had given anyone in years. Someone near the back of the hall began to clap, uncertain at first. Then more guests joined in, as if they had all silently agreed that this ending was far more interesting than the one they had been expecting. Even a few of Dorian's own men exchanged glances, unwilling to challenge an Alpha King standing so calmly in the middle of a room he had just broken into. Dorian, however, was not ready to let go so easily. "You can't simply walk in and take what isn't yours," he said, stepping toward Kael with his shoulders squared. "She was never yours to keep," Kael replied evenly. "A contract signed out of fear is not the same as a bond formed by choice. She agreed to marry me." "She agreed to survive," Kael said again, patient but unmoving. "There's a difference, and you know it." Dorian looked at Selene, perhaps hoping she would defend him, but she only shook her head slowly. "I'm sorry, Dorian," she said. "You didn't do anything wrong, but this isn't what either of us truly wanted. You wanted stability. I wanted safety. Neither of those things needed to come from love." Her honesty seemed to take the fight out of him. He looked around at the guests, at the broken doors, at the crown prince standing beside his almost bride, and seemed to understand that the moment had already slipped past his control. "Fine," he said finally, his voice quieter now. "Take her, but don't expect an easy alliance in the future." "I never expected easy," Kael said, "only fair." With that, the tension in the room began to ease. Guests slowly returned to their seats, though the atmosphere had shifted entirely from solemn to charged with curiosity. Whispered conversations spread from table to table, each version of the story growing slightly more dramatic than the last. Selene barely noticed. Her attention stayed on Kael, on the small scar near his temple that had not been there before, on the way his eyes softened whenever they met hers, as if he were reminding himself she was truly real, and not another dream from his years locked away. "Come with me," he said softly, offering his hand. She hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his fingers wrapped around hers gently, careful, as though she might disappear if he held too tightly. They walked together out of the ruined doorway, leaving behind the stunned guests, the abandoned bouquet, and the life she had planned to settle for. Outside, the night air was cool and smelled like rain. The stars were faint behind thin clouds, but the moon was full and bright, casting a silver light over the courtyard. "You really broke the doors," she said, glancing back at the shattered entrance. "I've been planning that entrance for 3 years," Kael admitted. "I imagined a lot of ways to come back. Somehow, breaking down doors felt right." She laughed, the sound surprising even herself. It had been a long time since laughter felt this easy. "You could have just knocked," she teased. "Where's the fun in that?" They walked further into the courtyard, away from the noise of the hall, until the sounds of the guests faded into the background. For the first time in years, Selene felt like she could breathe without calculating her next move, without weighing every decision against survival. "I thought about you every single day," Kael said quietly, his voice losing its earlier confidence, replaced by something softer, more vulnerable. "Even when I didn't know if you were alive, even when I didn't know if I would make it out." Selene squeezed his hand gently. "I thought I imagined you," she admitted. "I convinced myself the bond was something I made up to survive the loneliness." "It wasn't imagined," he said. "It was real. It's still real." They stood together under the moonlight, the weight of 3 lost years settling quietly between them, no longer painful, but simply part of the story that had brought them back to each other. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Kael said, brushing a strand of hair from her face, "we start over. Properly this time. No contracts, no arrangements, just us." Selene looked up at him, feeling something she had almost forgotten: hope, real and steady, without fear attached to it. "I'd like that," she said. Kael smiled, the first full smile she had seen from him since he walked through those broken doors. "Then let's make it official," he said. "Properly, this time." He knelt down, right there in the courtyard, beneath the moonlight, and asked her the question he had waited 3 long years to ask. This time, there was no audience, no politics, no fear guiding her answer. Only her heart. And when she said yes, it was the easiest word she had ever spoken.